All right, so if you're gearing up for the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, you already know that Amazon S3 is a topic you absolutely have to nail. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the absolute fundamentals. We're talking buckets, objects, and versioning to give you that core knowledge you need to just ace those exam questions. Let's get right into it. So first up, we're going to dig into what S3 object storage even is and why it's such a game changer. Then we'll get practical and learn how to build our digital warehouse using S3 buckets and, of course, how to stock the shelves with S3 objects. After that, we'll look at a super important safety feature called versioning. And then, to wrap it all up, we'll go through a quick cheat sheet of the biggest takeaways for your exam. So what exactly is S3? Well, before we jump into the nitty-gritty, you got to understand the huge problem it was designed to solve, which is, how in the world do you store data at a scale that's almost impossible to imagine?
I mean, really think about that for a second. Not 1,000 files, not 1,000,000, not even 1,000,000,000. How would you even begin to build a system that can handle hundreds of trillions of individual things, everything from your family photos to critical data for a massive company, and make it all available in an instant?
Yeah, that's the real number. Amazon S3 currently stores over 500 trillion objects. And look, that's not just some trivia fact, it's proof of how incredibly scalable and reliable this service is. This is the kind of scale the modern internet runs on. And to handle it, they needed a whole new way of thinking about storage. And that new way of thinking is called object storage. It's totally different from the folders inside a folder system on your laptop. The best way to picture it is like a single, massive, practically infinite digital warehouse. Instead of putting files in a complicated tree of folders, you just place your items, your objects, anywhere you want in this huge open space, and each one gets its own unique ticket, its own address. That flat structure is the secret sauce to S3's insane scale. So if S3 is this gigantic warehouse, how do you actually start using it? Well, the very first thing you need to do is carve out your own space. You need a container for your stuff. And in the world of S3, we call these buckets. So a bucket in S3 speak is just that, a container for your objects. It's the highest level of organization you've got. Before you can upload a single photo, a single document, anything, you first have to create a bucket to put it in. It's kind of like claiming your own little corner of that massive warehouse. Okay, pay close attention here because this slide has two facts that are absolutely critical for the exam. You will almost certainly see this. First, a bucket's name has to be globally unique. That means your bucket name can't be the same as anyone else's bucket name anywhere in the entire world. It's because the names are part of the web address, like a website. Second, even though the name is global, the bucket itself is region-specific. When you create it, you pick an AWS region, like US East 1, and that's where your data physically lives. And since those bucket names have to be unique across the entire planet and work in URLs, there are some pretty strict naming rules. The big rule to remember for your exam is this: lowercase letters, numbers, hyphens, and periods. That's it. No capital letters, no underscores, nothing fancy. So, for example, a name like My Unique CCP Study Bucket 2026, that's perfect. It follows all the rules, lowercase, numbers, hyphens, and it's probably specific enough that nobody else has taken it. But if you tried to create a bucket called My-Unique-Bucket, nope, not gonna work. And why? Simple. It's got those uppercase letters. It's a really basic rule, but trust me, it's a super common exam question. So make sure you've got that one locked in. Okay, so we've built our container, we've got our bucket, now it's time to actually stock the shelves. Let's talk about what we put in the bucket as S3 objects, which really is just a fancy name for your files and your data. So an S3 object is the fundamental thing you're storing. It's the actual file itself, the picture, the video, the database backup. And it also includes some really important information about that file, which we call metadata. So if the bucket is your corner of the warehouse, the objects are the actual boxes you're putting on the shelves. Now, every single object has a few parts to it, kind of like its anatomy. You've got the key, which is just its unique name inside the bucket. You can think of it like a file name or a file path. The value is the data itself, the actual contents of the file. Then there's metadata, which is data about the data, like how big the file is or what type of file it is. And finally, if you've turned on versioning, it'll have a version ID, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. All right, here's something that trips people up all the time, the difference between the key and the metadata. Here's the easiest way to remember it. The key is the object's name, its address. It tells you where to find it, like reports/2026/quarterlyreport.pdf. The metadata, on the other hand, describes the object. It tells you what it is, like content type, application/PDF. So key is where, metadata is what. Let's move on to one of the most powerful features in all of S3, and something you will definitely need to know for the exam: versioning. Honestly, the best way to think about it is as your get-out-of-jail-free card, your built-in insurance policy for your data. At its heart, S3 versioning does exactly what it sounds like. It keeps every single version of an object that you ever upload. I mean, this is your ultimate safety net. If you accidentally overwrite a super important file, or worse, delete something you absolutely shouldn't have, versioning is what lets you get it back. No sweat. So, let's walk through how this actually works. It's pretty cool. First, you upload a file, let's say report.pdf, and it gets its own unique version ID. Simple enough. Now, what happens when you upload a new file with the exact same name? Well, S3 doesn't just erase the old one. Instead, it makes the new upload the current version and just neatly keeps the old version tucked away. But here's the magic trick. What happens when you delete the file? S3 doesn't actually delete anything. It just puts a special little flag on top called a delete marker. That marker becomes the new current version, so the file looks like it's gone. But all the old versions are still there, perfectly safe and ready to be recovered. And hey, don't just take my word for it. AWS themselves say it loud and clear in their documentation. Versioning is specifically designed to help you recover from mistakes, whether it's human error or something an application did by accident. Okay, pencils down, this is a huge exam tip. As amazing and powerful as S3 versioning is, it is turned off by default. You have to manually go into your bucket settings and turn it on. They want to know that you know that. So remember, versioning is disabled by default. All right, we've gone through a lot of ground. Let's boil this all down to the absolute essentials you need for the Cloud Practitioner exam. This is your final cheat sheet. Let's just hammer these points home one last time. A bucket is your container, and its name has to be globally unique. The object key is the name of your file inside a specific bucket. Object metadata is just data about your object. And finally, versioning is that amazing safety net that protects you from accidents. And the crucial part to remember is that it is disabled by default. If you can just burn these 4 facts into your brain, you are going to be in fantastic shape for any basic S3 questions that come your way. So there you have it. You now know how to build your digital warehouse with buckets and how to stock it with objects. But that brings up one last really important question. How do you control who gets the keys to that warehouse? Well, that's all about security and access control, and that's a topic for our next explainer. Thanks for watching.